Welcome back for the third review, and now I will be talking about Rambo 3, the third movie. The first time was for himself, the second time was for his country, this time is for his friend. And I love this movie to death. Rambo 3 is actually, I would definitely say it's my favorite Rambo film. I forgot to mention previous review, but First Blood is my second favorite, and I would definitely say Rambo 3 is my favorite film. This is actually people's least favorite. This is the most underrated, unappreciated sequel ever. With Robocop 2, Predator 2, Missing in Action, Cobra, Blade Trinity. I also hate it so much, because it's not that good movie. Bullshit, I say it's a good movie. Now, as for Rambo 3, in my opinion, is a badass, a kick-ass. It's so good, it's a kick-ass movie. It's a kick-ass action movie. It's one of my personal favorite action movies of all time. It's my favorite Rambo film. And then I'll say First Blood, then Rambo, First Blood Part 2, then probably Rambo. But this is actually my favorite film because I just love this movie to death. I mean, Rambo 3, I always enjoy. This is my first film as I saw. I used to had this as classmate in the second grade who was always talking to me about First Blood, Rambo First Blood, how great that movie is. And the first time I think was 9 years old when I was 8 years old when I saw Rambo 3 and I on VHS, and I did not like it. I didn't like it. The open scene, how these two guys are fighting, killing each other. I didn't like it. But when I had a classmate who was keep telling me how First Blood is the best, that he always watches, that Rambo First Blood is his favorite film, I wanted to get this film to see it, because because my neighbors who had the video store, they only had Rambo 3. They never planned to have the trilogy, only the third movie. It was taped. I think there was this Audie Murphy's movie Operation Petticoat was first, then was Rambo 3. And I think that around December 1994, I got a break because I finally did got Rambo 3. Finally I got Rambo 3. I did got Rambo 3 on VHS, and I remember that scene in the caves. When Rambo fires a bow and arrow. The guy, the owner who previously had the VHS did not rewind it back, but I rewind it, and then I went fast forward to skip that film, that until we have a VHS, VHS tapes. I skip forward and I watched Rambo 3, and Rambo 3 became my personal favorite action film. Sylvester Stallone's first movie that I actually I saw was Rocky 4. Then was I grew up more with Rockies, but there was Rocky 4. Then it was Rocky 5 and Rocky 3. Have not seen the first two movies, but I only saw Rocky 3, 4, and 5, and I saw Tango and Cash, and of course the Rambo trilogy, which I saw. But Rambo was actually the first film. This is actually the first film I saw as a kid. And as a kid, by the trilogy, my favorite was Rambo 3, then was First Blood, then was Rambo First Blood Part 2. Because First Blood was the second film I saw, and it shocked me, it rocked me, so great it was. Now as for Rambo 3, it's one of the best, the greatest masterpiece, badass, classic action movies ever. They don't make Rambo 3 movies like this anymore. Rambo 3 is actually my personal favorite action movie for all time. I also do have the DVD, which is, I prefer this poster, which is much better. And I also do have this DVD, this Blu-ray, I don't like this poster as much, so I'm not gonna show it anymore. But I prefer, this one, Rambo 3 is such a kick-ass movie, such a pure badass kick-ass movie. My favorite Rambo movie, my favorite action movie of all time. So yes, Rambo 3 is my favorite action movie of all time, and I'm gonna rank them. This is gonna be my favorite Rambo film. I think the action's much better executed than the first and then the second movie, in my opinion. Rambo is a badass, such a pure badass film in this movie. In the opening scene, we have a beautiful music score by Jerry Goldsmith, rest in peace. Jerry Goldsmith music for Rambo 3 is to me better. It's much better, for the third movie. Rambo is actually much better music score than the first one. And I love that it's in the desert. The movie was shot in Israel. I forgot to mention it. But Rambo 3 was the most expensive Rambo of all 5 Rambo movies. This movie was the most expensive film. I wrote the budget. The budget for this movie cost $63 million. And thanks to the fucking fanboys, this movie was cut to shreds, because claiming, oh, Rambo is helping after 9/11, Rambo is helping the Taliban. Fuck that. Rambo was not helping the Taliban. It was a different time. It was a different war, you idiots. And they were mujahideen. They were not Taliban. It's a difference, I even saw 5 years ago when some guy broke the VHS tape with a hammer, with a sledgehammer on Rambo 3, This movie gets so much hate. Directed by Peter McDonald and written by Sheldon Lettich and Sylvester Stallone. Sheldon Lettich was the one who directed the movies with Jean-Claude Van Damme, Lionheart, Double Impact, I think was The Order, and In Hell. In Hell was directed by Ringo Lam. He directed that movie, The Hard Corps. He directed The Hard Corps. That movie sucked. But Sheldon Lettich directed Leonhardt, Double Impact, and of course he directed The Order, and then later that piece of trash from The Hard Corps. But Sheldon Lettich was constantly working with Van Damme, and Sylvester Stallone. Sheldon Lettich wrote the screenplay for this movie, directed by Peter McDonald. At one point, Russell Mulcahy, who directed Highlander, supposed to direct this film, but I think it was 2 weeks before the shooting of the film, Sylvester Stallone asked Russell Mulcahy that he brings some guys who look like Russian soldiers. And this guy, instead, he bring models. He bring the models that they look like fucking boys. And Stallone was pissed that he got fired, And Peter McDonald did got, I read that Peter McDonald claimed that he failed, that he tried to do Rambo more human, but he failed. But I disagree. Peter McDonald did a great direction, It was excellent choice for directing the third sequel in the Rambo films, And this is the third sequel in the Rambo franchise, to First Blood and Rambo First Blood Part 2. And Jerry Goldsmith's beautiful music score, and of course Richard Crenna returns. And we also do have Kurt Smith as Robert Griggs, he's from Embassy, Robert Griggs. Kurt Smith was right after this movie, he was in RoboCop, and he was also in this movie. You see, this movie, Broken Arrow. He was also in Broken Arrow. Kurt Smith, Kurt Smith was in this film. He had only 2 scenes, but that was excellent, And the rest of the cast, I don't know. But I'm glad that there is no girl in this movie, because Rambo was much badass, I love this movie to death. I love this movie. This is a badass movie. It's the most underrated movie. I also think it has better action than all 4 movies, my opinion. All 4 Rambo movies I love to death, But if you can see, my icon is Rambo 3. And even in my background is also Rambo 3, And Rambo 3 was my first film as Rambo 3 was my first film as a kid, and I grew up with this movie. It's rated R. They're hard rated R scenes. They are. And I would never say it's the finest action film, but Rambo 3 did not got worldwide $300 million. It got only $189 million. The gross, because the budget was actually $63 million, but it was not successful like the first two movies were. And yes, the year of 1988 was the release year for Rambo 3. This was the release for Rambo 3. This is the film I saw on VHS as a kid, and I constantly watched it as a kid. It was my favorite film. It's my favorite childhood film. It was my favorite. If I would not see this movie, I would not be a fan of Rambo films. But Rambo 3 is my favorite Rambo movie of all time. And this came out the same year as Die Hard, and I would really love to see in IMAX in the movie theater Rambo 3 and Die Hard. But I'm never gonna see those two movies. But Rambo 3 and Die Hard are definitely my favorite action movies ever. But yeah, when I review Die Hard, I'll show you the poster. You can't see it here because it's backwards. But Rambo 3 is such a pure badass action film of all time. Sylvester Stallone's best movie that he ever did. My favorite Stallone movie. And Sylvester Stallone was actually in his best shape. He was training. He was in best shape. He was training the muscle fiber. He was so badass. And what I loved about this movie is actually that Rambo over the top, blasting C4 tip explosive arrows, blowing up helicopters to pieces. He goes and blows up the helicopters, or Rambo Khan's Spetsnaz, commandos with C4 tip arrows, in the cave, and yeah, Rambo, I love the cave scenes in which Rambo hands the Spetsnaz commandos. He goes and fires a blue light, a Kaluyan blue light attached to explosive arrow. No, actually it wasn't explosive. It was just an arrow with Kaluyan blue light, and he attached to the arrow fires. And he makes a version while other commandos are firing at their own men. He also blows 3 guys in the caves to pieces. It's my favorite scene with C4 tip arrows. He goes and blasts the helicopter with explosive arrows, C4 tip arrow. They don't make them like this anymore. They don't. This is the last movie that we'll see Rambo using C4 tip arrows. I love the cave scene, and I love that Richard Crenna, and Sylvester Stallone did work well in this movie. They're now like more a team, which I love that. And Rambo 3 is a hard-ass, badass, kick-ass action movie. Such a badass, phenomenal kick-ass movie. It just speaks to me. I mean, this is so least favorite people's film. I can't believe how much people hate this film. It's just such a pure badass film. And also this time Rambo has different knife. Rambo is actually using different knife, but sadly I don't have the picture of the knife. But this time was a Bowie knife. It wasn't survival knife like was the first two movies. It was actually a Bowie knife, and it was actually a Bowie knife, but it wasn't designed by Jimmy Lyle. It was actually designed by Gil Heben. It was now not survives a Bowie knife that Rambo was using when he used and cuts that wire. He goes and cuts wire, cut barbed wire on the base perimeter. It was actually different. It was a different knife. And I think at one point Jimmy Lyle expressed disappointment because Sylvester Stallone hired someone else to design a Bowie knife. And I remember that Jimmy Lyle wanted to design a machete or a new knife for Rambo in Rambo 4, but because Stallone wanted to do himself, Jimmy Lyle was pissed, That's what I read it on IMDb trivia. By the Sylvester Stallone did design his own machete in the Rambo 4, But this movie he has a different knife, a Buick knife, designed by this guy Gil Heben, I forgot, but it's a Buick knife. And Rambo 3 just speaks to such a badass, phenomenal action movie. It's a masterpiece, an 80s masterpiece. The Rambo 3 was always to me the best one, because it's my first film. There's more character development, and I just love, the history about Afghanistan. I love the shot, the deserts, how they filmed. I just love everything with this film, I love the night scenes. I love the action. The action's better executed. But yeah, so I'm talking now for 15 minutes about movie, but then I'll go to the plot. Rambo is now in Thailand. He's stick fighting. He's actually stick fighting. That scene isn't that great. That scene is better. That scene. Rambo is now stick fighting for the money. He lives in the monastery. He lives in that monastery, and he's been visited by his friend Colonel Troutwell. Excuse me. He's actually been visited by Colonel Troutman, and he asked Troutman asked him if Rambo would go on a mission in Afghanistan, in which they're gonna bring supplies, Stinger missiles, and of course food and medicine and supplies to Afghanistan's freedom fighters against the Russian commander, who's very brutal who's very brutal, in that perimeter, and Rambo says you're not gonna do it, and Chama says yes, I'm gonna do it, and I love the speech between Rambo and Troutman, and Rambo says, you really think it's gonna make difference, I love, I put in my time. It means my word's over, that's what Rambo says, And Rambo says to Troutman, do you really think we're gonna make a difference, They said before, 9 more. And I love when Troutman tells him, look, we found, I'll tell you a story about this statue, The guy was working on a statue, and he only put some pieces, and he only sharpened some pieces. And when it was done, the people said that he did a great statue, but the guy said no, I just roughed the edges, And Troutman says, we didn't make you full bloody machine out of you. We only just roughed some edges, And I just love that, And when are you gonna make a full circle, And Rambo did a full circle in Rambo 4, And when are you gonna do a full circle? And Rambo, such a pure badass he is, He says, yeah, okay, Rambo lets Troutman to go on his own. And in the border in Afghanistan, Colonel Troutman has been now captured by Soviet invasions, by the Soviet army, and he's been now treated by Colonel Zyson, And this is what's different between the first 2 Rambo movies and the third one. In the first 2 movies, Rambo has been captured and tortured. This movie is actually the opposite. Colonel Troutman has been now captured and tortured, I did not remember the lines, but during interrogation between Zyson and Troutman, Troutman says your war machine is full of freedom fighters, and we tried. We already had our Vietnam. Now we're gonna yours here too, And I just love that, because Sylvester Stallone in an interview when I watched, he said that he tried to do a different Vietnam. They already had Vietnam and tried to do different Vietnam. That the Russians are gonna have their own Vietnam. Just like they American soldiers could not win the war in Vietnam, the Russians could not, And Stallone said it was his fault, but I still have a question. Sly, yes, you, Sly, do you like this film or not? I really want to know, do you like this film or not? Because one Sly says that that's his least favorite, second says that he likes it. I mean, do you like this film or not, Sly? Because I love this movie to death. It's special to my heart, Stallone, But Colonel Griggs informs Rambo and says that to run. Colonel Shotton's been captured, and Rambo says, "What about me? What about you? Can you do it? I don't feel sure I can do it, but you were captured or killed. We're gonna deny any participation." And of course, Rambo says, "Sounds familiar." And Rambo goes now into Afghanistan, Peshawar, and he meets Musagani, played by Saison Gabay, I think was played by Saison Gabay, and of course Saison Gabay says, Musagani brings him in the village, in the village in Afghanistan, and then we see a lot of beautiful Afghanistan, the beautiful locations in Israel they filmed, and they Rambo with on a horse. Sylvester Stallone really did ride horses. He know how to ride horses. Just like in Hard Target, just when them in Hard Target didn't know how to ride a horse. In this movie, Rambo is riding a horses, which is such a badass, iconic film, And Rambo goes to be with he goes and meets with all these guys, with those with mujahidins, and they try to find out a way how to rescue his friend, and they are actually playing this sport, a national sport, which they're hunting, which they all hunting this sheep, in the hand. It's a national sport, and Rambo has been invited. That's my favorite. It's such a national sport that they always to Rambo. They always go. They accept him. It's one of them. And Rambo goes play the football. Of course, wins it. Says I prefer football. That's football. I love that. There's also this kid, and who also wants the amulet that Rambo is wearing, from the second movie. As a luck, he watches the knife, which I love that, and says, "Good knife, are you give it to me?" And Rambo says, "No, I can't," And I read that, no, actually I heard about it in different reviews, that at one point Rambo, Sylvester Stallone and this kid did not get along, but this kid wasn't that much in the movie, but they did not get along, this kid and Rambo, Sylvester Stallone did not get along in this movie. At least that's what I heard about it, But yeah, when they're playing, when actually they are going playing the national sports game, I think was the hunt for the sheep, this Colonel Zyson with his Russian and the signs, the modern helicopter shows up. Him and another helicopter, shows up and start attacking people, attacking people, blowing villages, and Rambo runs and says, "Oh, go, move, get cover." Rambo then runs, and he goes to, he actually goes to, he runs to that hill where there's a heavy machine, with a heavy machine arsenal. Rambo finally goes to the heavy machine arsenal and aims at fires and destroys the helicopter to pieces. Yes, he destroys the helicopter to pieces, and then he hides. And Colonel Zyson, says, Colonel Zyson then says, "Aren't you?" Colonel Zyson then goes back, and we see Rambo all black, with covered with dirt, and that's just realistic, Rambo is like this, and another beautiful song, by Jerry Goldsmith's beautiful music score, the most beautiful, phenomenal music score of all time. And and this guy, I think was Masood, he was the leader. He said, "Hansi not there. I am going to do Pakistan. Are you coming?" And Rambo says, "No. I'm going back to I'm actually going to the fortress." Here not seen enough dead. There's supposed to be an honor. There's supposed to be an honor. Where's the honor here? Anyone's supposed to be one honor. Where's the honor here? Where's the honor in here? I just love that. And says, "Rambo, I'm going back." And says, "Very well, you're a good friend." And Musagani says, "I'm coming with you." And also this kid says, "I'm coming," but Rambo says, "No, not with me." And I just love that, And I just love this movie so much. I mean, this movie is such a pure kick-ass, badass action, phenomenal classic that speaks to me, such a badass action movie of all time, And Musagani asks Rambo what he had to do, because he's doing it for me. And I just love that, And now in the night, that's my first scene, Rambo, like a pure badass with his moving knife, goes to the minefield and finds a mine, and he's crawling under that grenade. Rambo grabs the grenade launcher before that grenade before it explodes, and Rambo with Musagani and also this kid shows up, they all put the detonators, all detonators they put, I forgot to mention when he meets Musagani, all the equipment you may ask her here, and there's this blue light, and the guy asks, "What does it do?" It turns blue. I love that, forgot to mention that. But Rambo then, with Musagani, puts all the booby traps, all those detonators in the Russian base, puts all detonators, and he almost rescue Colonel Troutman, but he goes to those prisoners, those women prisoners, and asks, Colonel, and they say, "Hatu," and Rambo says, Colonel, can you walk? Sure, I can. I love that, Tries to save tries to save Troutman, but of course this kid shows up and says, "John, behind you." Rambo grabs a dagger, but it's a kid, But then this guy Russia shows up with a gun, and Rambo throws the goddamn dagger in the fucking the knife direct in the neck of that Russian, And because they found out and heard the fires, the gunshot fires, Rambo grabs an AK-47, fires the bad guys, kills all the bad guys. But also this guy, played by Randy Rene, he was Kuro, he fires with the grenade launcher, with AK-47 grenade launcher, and he hits Rambo in the lower abdomen, there near the stomach, in the ribs, and Rambo Rambo now runs out of the base, while everything explodes. You see practical explosions, And Rambo also, he holds himself under the tank, Try to do that, hold yourself for like 30 seconds on a check. You're not gonna less than 5 seconds, because you're gonna get cramps and your bag is gonna be on fire. But Rambo Stallone was holding for the real tanks, He was holding himself under the tank and dragging himself, which that was his best shame in life. That was for real. It was all practical, That time there were no CGI. They were all practical done. The explosions, I still remember when I watched as a kid this movie. Yes, it stayed in my heart, and I love this movie so much. This is my movie, my personal favorite action movie. Love this movie to death. And yes, Rambo So Rambo now with the kid, and another Mujahideen shows up and they fire at him and hits him, with a horse, and Rambo grabs, MP7, he grabs the Russians, anti-tank grenade launcher, just like in Rambo First Part 2, and blows the truck to the pieces, and he cuts them. He goes and cuts them the road, He goes and he cuts them the road, so they can't go. And we see Kuro and the other men flip over the truck so that they can make clear the road. And now Rambo, which he's a pure badass, they go under sewer. They're still hunted by the Spetsnaz, and Rambo puts another detonator, another C4 explosion, detonator device, and underwater Rambo fights the bad guys, and there's an explosion, and then Rambo, like strong hands, broke that cells, the window. He broke that cells, and they escape, to the sewer. They now escape, and no one follows them now. And Rambo is in the cave at night, in a fire, and he sends the Musagani and the kid home, while Rambo, this is actually the most memorable scene, that I actually do love. Rambo did had, I think was an arsenal and weapon, which was stuck under his ribs, his body under his ribs, and I think was a sharpened tack, It was, I would say more, I would say definitely more, how you call it, I would say more, a shrapnel, and more a shrapnel, And Rambo uses a bullet, and he cuts the bullet, uses the gunpowder, puts the gunpowder in his flesh wound, and then he uses a stick of fire, this is crazy. He goes and lights his wound on fire, and he explodes. Says, Jesus, that is done for real. Do you know how much that hurts? How much that hurts? That hurts so much. What Rambo was doing, and he was been ignoring the pain, and he pulled that thing out of his body, that piece of metal that was stuck under his ribs, in his body, his stomach. He put the thing out, put the gunpowder in it, and then he put a stick with a fire, and he burns himself. That's so crazy. It was the most painful I ever seen on a screen. It was painful. It's not something to mess around. It's painful, And I forgot that memory scene when this guy, breaks in that cell and of Colonel Troutman, and starts wiping Colonel Troutman, this guard. And then Zeiser shows up. Who's this goddamn tourist? He was almost trying to kill me, but he failed. And the down, I'm gonna hunt his down and his skin alive, And of course, Troutman says, you have to hunt him. He's gonna come. He's gonna find you. It says, what? Man against 30 commandos? Against 30 Spetsnaz commandos? And you're saying, who do you think this man is? God? No, God will have mercy. He won't. And I love that, No, God will have mercy. He won't. That's my favorite scene. Richard Crenna was such a great in this movie. Rest in peace, Richard Crenna, And now Rambo, he's climbing, Rambo goes back to the fortress, and he's climbing, without equipment, and that's actually the badass scene, Then he climbs to the top of the hill, grabs this commando guard, and breaks his neck. He breaks his goddamn neck, And Rambo then saves all the prisoners with Troutman. They all escape, They all run in the helicopter, and Rambo escapes the helicopter. He escapes in the helicopter like a pure badass he is. Blows the helicopter, blows the watchtower with bad guys, And Zeiss and other are shooting on Rambo, but Rambo with the prisoners and with the Troutman escapes, and they fly down and they go out. Rambo grabs a gun, and they run away, and the helicopter explodes, to pieces. And Rambo and Troutman are now running, and they actually been found by Zyson and Kuro. And Zyson grabs another gun, just like in Rambo First Part 2, another weapon, and throws on Rambo, but Rambo slides down the rope, in the hole in the cave, and there's an explosion, and you see a fire explosion, and Rambo almost escaped the explosions, And of course, Troutman says, "How you feel, John? You teach us to ignore pain." And Troutman says, "This work, not really." And says, "How do you feel, John?" "Well done, I'm sorry I got in this mess." And Rambo says, "No." "No, you're not." And Rambo, this is my favorite scene, which I mentioned before. Rambo, with first he designs his bow, then he makes an explosion arrow. He goes up the hill and aims and fires and blows the helicopter with C4 explosive arrow to pieces. That's my favorite scene. He blows the C4 arrow with the explosive to pieces. My favorite scene. And Rambo now in the cave. He goes and he uses bow and arrow, which is the first scene I saw, bow and arrow, and find this in this Spetsnaz commando, which he has a green light on his head, and sees Rambo way too late, and Rambo fires arrow at him and hits him, and then he grabs a radio from that commando, and when Zyson wants to know what's going on, says, "Listen, who are you? Your worst nightmare." That's my favorite scene and my favorite line. "Who are you? Your worst nightmare." And Rambo then goes and hunts all this Spetsnaz, he goes and hunts them down one by one. He goes and hunts them down, and he goes and he fires. He grabs a blue Kaluyan light, attached on the arrow, and he fires at the Spetsnaz and makes diversion. The rest of the commandos are firing on their own, and Rambo also stabs one of the guy with his Buick knife, I forgot to say, but also Rambo stabbed and he was rescuing Troutman. He was also stabbing the guard in the back, and shows that snitch. He throws that knife, but the snitch escaped, Of course, he missed him, but the snitch escaped. And Rambo, as a pure badass he is, he saves Troutman that time, and he kicks the shit out of those guards, with sticks, like a pure badass he is. I forgot that. And in the caves, Rambo goes and stabs with his Buick knife one of the guards, he stabs him, you see Rambo's face. That was his Buick knife that he stabbed one of those motherfuckers, And there's also a blue Kaluyan light on the floor, and one of those commandos put the blue light, and there was he actually grabbed the blue light and looked on it, and he actually triggered a grenade, which was wired, and the grenade explodes, and kills the guy, because he was stupid. He did not saw it was a booby trap, And also Rambo then grabs a C4 arrow, and when this guy with the assassin is shooting at him, Rambo fires at Kuro, but Kuro grabs one of his men, and the man kind of saves Kuro's life, And then Rambo also when almost gets killed, Chaga shows up with a machine gun and shoots the bad guy, and says Rambo says good time, and says Chaga says what the friends are for, And Rambo says, go up, see if there's anyone else, and there's still 3 guys that are fighting Rambo, and Rambo grabs, arrow, C4 tip arrow, aims and fires and kills 3 bad guys with explosive arrow, which is my favorite scene, with explosion, Then he climbs the line up the hill, and then I don't know how that happened, but Kuro shows up, grabs Rambo, he goes in the scene, he goes in the scene and grabs Rambo for the neck, and they both start fighting, struggling each other, and Rambo, like a pure badass, is, by the way, this is actually the helicopter, this kind of helicopter, but Rambo is a pure badass, he says, Rambo goes like a pure badass, and struggles and fights with Kuro, and then he pulls the safety tips from those hand grenades, and Kuro looks, because he tied the rope around his neck, and Rambo uses a spin kick, that is the same spin kick that we saw in the open scene, from the stick fighter. He uses a spin kick and punches Kuro, which he falls down, with the rope, and he gets stuck, and then you see explosions, he already Renee's blown to pieces, he's blown to pieces, which is a badass, and now Rambo and Troutman, they actually succeeded, they eluded the captures, they escaped the Spetsnaz, but like they thought in the valley that is over, now a group of soldiers, the Red Army shows up with all the Spetsnaz commandos, and now surrounded, and this is the first time when Rambo says, when Troutman says, Sahan don't believe him, and says, what do you say, John? And Rambo says, fuck him, and he goes and fires at them, which is my favorite music score, and he goes with a machine gun, grabs, fires at them. There's a truck, destroys the truck with grenade launcher, with grenades. He took it from Kuro, which is a badass, he fires, and that time Mujahideen shows up and start turn up the heat, and Rambo goes on the machine guns and fires the bad guys. He goes with the horse, grabs the bottle with the fire on it, but falls down, and he also destroys the tank. And Rambo also goes now, he jumps, he jumps and grabs a machine gun, kills 2 Russians in the tank. Rambo goes in the tank, and he goes to fight off, in this helicopter. He goes and fight off Colonel Zeissen's helicopter, Russian helicopter, and Rambo, like a pure badass, fighter, and he with a machine gun, he hits Zeissen, but then he actually crashed in the helicopter, and see a practical explosion, a real explosion, in the tank. And Rambo survives this time, Rambo actually survives this time, which was actually a pure badass, And on the end, the kid asks Rambo if he can stay, but Rambo says, no, I can stay. And of course now Trout and Rambo are going home with the jeep, and Sean says the age kind of softens, and Rambo says just a little, And the movie then ends, which is written, the movie is dedicated to the gallant of Afghanistan people. But actually, they actually changed on Blu-ray. But on VHS, it was actually writers dedicated to all the Afghanistan freedom fighters, and because of 9/11, they had to change it to the gallant people of Afghanistan. There is also an alternate version in which Rambo, goes back to the Mujahideen to help them, He goes back and stabs them, but that scene was cut, but was alternate version. I don't like that song, He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother, don't like that song, but Rambo 3 I love to death. I think that I kinda forgot, I forgot to mention, when you see Rambo driving a tank, if you pay attention, the first movie, First Blood, Rambo said, that time I could drive a gunship, a tank, helicopter. That means Rambo was qualified. Rambo was actually educated to drive a tank. He was educated. He was learning how to drive a tank. He was also probably had a helicopter pilot. He pilot drive-ins, private license. I mean, not private, pilot license. He also had a pilot license, and he was educated to drive. He was educated to drive a helicopter or a tank, because in Vietnam he was driving a tank and a helicopter, and he was driving worth $1 million equipment, and that's how we know that Rambo can drive a tank, and Rambo uses a shank. We see a tanks. We see a lot of spetsnaz. We see a lot of commandos. The weapons are done for real. The practical explosions. And this is the first time that we're actually gonna see Rambo with bow and arrow. Yes, Rambo is using the grenade launcher, but I don't see. But there's no scenes in this movie in which Rambo uses a bow and arrow, except that scene in which he has bow and arrow. But this is the last time that we'll see Rambo, Rambo with bow and arrow. This is the last time we're actually gonna see Rambo with bow and arrow and C4 tip arrows. And I'm not counting Rambo 2008 or Rambo 4, in which he used different bow and arrow. He does not use the same bow and arrow that he did in this movie. Does not use the same bow and arrow, does not use the same action. I mean, Rambo 3, in my opinion, is the most underrated action film. As a kid, non-stop, I was watching this film. I watched this film more than the first one. That's one of the reasons. But Rambo First World Part 2, the reason why it became my favorite action film was because I was non-stop hearing this asshole, this stupid Jack with asshole on YouTube who keeps saying how great that movie is. Rambo First World Part 2 is great. It's definitely one of the greatest action sequences. But Rambo 3 is also one of the greatest action sequences. It's a kick-ass, pure badass action film. Yes, I love this movie to death. I think it's now 47 about the movie. I love the deserts. I love when Rambo uses the bandana in this movie. I love the spin kick that Rambo uses, or when he fights in the stick fighting. Oh, some guy wrote a long time ago it was a hustler. Who cares? He was a hustler. He was helping people, He fought for the money so that he was helping the people because the monastery, they let him live, they let him, that he could stay there, and I love that, and Rambo says, I love that, I love in here, I love work here, I love in here, he tries to find peace, he tries to find a peace in himself, and I just think that there is no need to Rambo 4, but many will disagree, but those are the movies I watched as a kid, those are the movies that I watched as a kid on VHS non-stop, Rambo 3 is such a phenomenal, pure badass, kick-ass action film. Richard Gere, now recipes, he did a great job as Simon Troutman. This movie speaks to me, such a pure badass movie. But yeah, it's a pure badass movie, it's a great action movie. It's a kick-ass, badass, underrated. It's underrated. It's people's least favorite Rambo film. This movie always ends up last. It's much better than Rambo Last Blood. Fuck that movie. Fuck that piece of shit movie. It's much better than Last Blood, because this is my favorite movie, Rambo 3. Peter McDonald did a great job directing. Sylvester Stallone's best performance. He's a top. He's in the shape. Love the nice scenes. I love the nice scenes for the Stallone. I love Stallone's in the top shape. He's letting himself dragging under the tank, which is a pure badass. This movie is such a pure badass. I mean, Rambo 3 is a badass, kick-ass action movie masterpiece. One of the best 80s action movies. I mean, they don't make them like this anymore. I miss movies like this anymore. Why can't we do movies like this anymore? I want movies like this anymore. I want movies like this anymore. Like this more. I want movies like this more. Rambo 3. Why can't we get Rambo 3? But that's my movie review. One of my friends gonna say goodbye. Say goodbye. Bye bye, Rick. Luba. He's gonna say bye, my dog. Bye bye. Take care, and I'll see you next time. It's gonna be Rambo in a few days. I'm out. Peace. Ciao. Bye.